She didn't look at me when she said it. Her voice was low, unhurried, like she'd already decided how the next few minutes would unfold. "The files can wait," she murmured, and the soft click of the office door behind us sounded a lot louder than it should have. I'd stayed late before, but never alone with her. Danica, my boss's secretary for nearly 12 years, didn't carry herself the way anyone else in this place did. She wasn't loud, or overly polished, or trying to impress anyone. She had this kind of presence that made people speak softer when she walked into a room, even if they didn't know why. I'd always noticed, but noticing it this close was something else entirely. She walked past me toward her desk, not rushed, not pretending to be busy. Just moving like someone who trusted the air around her to make space. Her heels were off, abandoned near the filing cabinet, and I could hear the hush of her bare steps on the carpet. Her blouse was slightly undone at the top, like she'd grown tired of keeping it perfect through the day. Moonlight from the tall windows behind her turned the edges of her hair into something I couldn't stop following with my eyes. "Why are you still here?" she asked, finally looking my way. There was no real challenge in her voice, just a curiosity with a shadow of something warmer beneath it. "I thought you needed help sorting the reports." My voice sounded different in the quiet, like I was testing it. She gave the smallest smile, not quite amused, but not dismissive either. "She didn't tell me that I could leave. She didn't tell me to stay, either. She just watched me, the way someone watches a candle to see if it stays lit." For a moment, neither of us moved. The building felt hollowed out at night, no phones ringing, no printers, no footsteps from the hallway. Just the distant hum of the vents and the weight of silence between us. She leaned her hip against the corner of the desk and rested her hands behind her, arching slightly. Something about the way she held herself, relaxed, but perfectly aware, made me swallow before I spoke again. "You're not actually working, are you?" I said, not accusing, not joking. Just trying to understand what this was. Her eyes narrowed just a breath, not in annoyance, but like I'd stepped close to something she hadn't named yet. "Not right now," she said. A strand of hair fell forward and she tucked it behind her ear with slow fingers. I pretended not to stare at the movement of her hand, the glint of the ring she didn't wear anymore, the way her collarbone shifted when she breathed. I took one step closer to hand her the folder I'd been carrying, but when she reached for it, her fingers didn't just take the paper, they brushed mine. Not accidental. Not hesitant. Just, there. It was the kind of touch that doesn't last long, but stays long after it's gone. Her skin was warm, soft in the center of her palm, cool along the tips of her fingers. She didn't look down at our hands. She looked at me like she'd already seen my reaction before I had it. "I could lock the other door too," she said quietly, nodding toward the hallway. "If you're going to be here a while." My heartbeat stuttered at the casualness of it. Like this was nothing. Like she didn't just press a question into the air without actually speaking it. I opened my mouth to answer, but the sound of footsteps echoed from somewhere down the hall, slow, approaching, unannounced. Danica didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't take her hand back. She just looked at me, long, steady, unreadable. And the doorknob behind me turned. The door never opened. Whoever was in the hallway walked past without stopping, and the muted footsteps faded into nothing. I don't know how long I stayed still, waiting, pretending I wasn't imagining her fingers still close to where mine had been. When the quiet settled again, she moved first, only a breath, a small tilt of her head, as if she'd given the moment permission to continue. "You don't scare easily," she said, like it was an observation she'd been collecting for a while. "I'm not sure that's true," I admitted. Her gaze didn't soften, but it shifted in some small way, like she was deciding whether to let me see past the surface. Then she exhaled, slow and quiet, and stepped away from the desk. She passed close, too close for accident, and brushed against my arm as she moved toward the locked door behind me. Her scent followed, something warm and subtle, with the faint sharpness of office coffee still clinging to her sleeve. She didn't unlock the door. She just touched the knob and then let her hand drop. "You know I was married, right?" she said, not quite turning toward me. I hesitated. I heard. She gave a quiet laugh with no humor in it. People don't hear things in an office. They repeat them. I didn't argue. She finally looked at me, and the desk lamp behind her threw half her face in shadow. I'd never realized how tired her eyes looked up close, not in the way of exhaustion, but in the way of someone who'd had too many late nights with no one to talk to when she went home. He left, she said simply. 3 years ago. Not for someone else. Just left. Said he felt like he wasn't needed. I still don't know what that means. My instinct was to fill the silence with something reassuring, but the words died in my throat. She didn't want comfort. She wanted someone to hear it without trying to fix it. You ever been in love? She asked, suddenly redirecting, but not unkindly. I could have lied. I almost did. But her tone made honesty feel safer than pretending. Not in a way that lasted. She studied me like she was trying to picture it. The corner of her mouth lifted, not in amusement, but in something like understanding. It would look bad, I said before I could talk myself out of it. If anyone thought, I didn't finish. She didn't make me. You're an adult, she said. I'm not your teacher, or your boss, or anything that could get me fired. But people don't care about technicalities. They care about how things look. She stepped closer again, close enough that her hip brushed the edge of the filing cabinet beside me. Her hand lifted as if to touch my shoulder, but midway up, she hesitated. Instead, her fingers barely grazed the fabric of my sleeve and rested there, light as a breath. And how does it look from here? I asked, keeping my voice low. Her eyes held mine for a beat too long. Like I should step back. Should you? She didn't answer. But she didn't move away, either. Her hand lingered just a second more, warm through the thin cotton, before she finally withdrew it. Not because she wanted to. Because she had to. But the space between us wasn't the same anymore. And neither of us pretended it was. She didn't touch me again after that, but she didn't step far either. The unspoken thing between us simmered in the quiet, as if the air itself had decided to keep the secret, for now. I turned toward the stack of folders on the smaller desk just to give my hands something to do. She watched me sort through them, not speaking, but not pretending to work either. The silence wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't wrong. It just felt like something was happening in the spaces between the words we didn't say. Her phone buzzed on the desk. She didn't move at first. Then she reached for it and glanced at the screen. I couldn't read the message, but whatever it was, it made her jaw tense in a way I hadn't seen before. She clicked the screen off and set the phone down too gently. Everything okay? I asked. She didn't lie. It's my sister. She forgets I don't live according to her schedule. She checking on you? Checking up, she corrected, with the faintest bitterness. She thinks since I'm alone now, I need managing. I didn't tell her she didn't seem like someone who needed managing. She wouldn't have believed it, and I didn't want to sound like I was trying to impress her. I placed the last folder down and straightened. She was closer than before. I hadn't heard her cross the floor, but there she was, barely a step away, eyes fixed on mine like she'd already decided not to back down this time. You keep looking at me like you're waiting for permission, she said quietly. I'm not. You are, she insisted, but her voice wasn't sharp. More like she was asking me to hear her honesty and respond with my own. I took a breath. If I wasn't, would that be worse? Her lips parted, and for a second I thought she might laugh, but the sound never came. She looked at my mouth, then away, then back again. Her hand rose slightly, fingers brushing the air like she was considering closing the inch of space that still felt like a mile. Then, heavy footsteps in the hallway. Not passing this time. Stopping. Her eyes widened just enough to show it rattled her. She stepped back so quickly it almost registered as panic, and I turned just as the handle on the outer door jiggled. A man's voice, muffled through the wood, Danica? You still in there? Her eyes darted to the second door, the one she'd almost locked. She held up a hand to me without speaking, asking for stillness, for silence. "I'm finishing something," she called out, steadying her voice faster than I could steady my own breathing. "You need help locking up?" he asked. "No," she replied, too quickly. Then softer, "I'm fine." A pause. "All right. I'm heading out now." We listened to the footsteps fade again, but this time neither of us relaxed. My pulse thudded in my throat, and she was looking at me the way someone looks at a fire they shouldn't touch but can't ignore. "You should go," she said, not moving. "I know. But I didn't." She exhaled once, slow. Then she stepped toward me again, closer than before, close enough that the heat from her body grazed my chest. Her hand hovered near mine, not touching, but aware. "I don't know what we think we're doing," she whispered. Neither did I. But neither of us stepped back. She didn't touch me, but she also didn't move away. The nearness felt deliberate, like she was testing whether I'd step back first. I didn't. The office lights were dimmed now, only the lamp on her desk casting a warm, low glow across the floor. It cut across her face in soft gold, catching the fine lines near her eyes, the shape of her mouth, the way the loose strands of hair rested against her collarbone. She looked undone, but not in a careless way. More like she'd stopped fighting some invisible tension hours ago and never said it out loud. "I told myself this was just a late night at work," she said quietly, her voice tight at the edges. "And now?" She looked at me sharply, and something in her expression flickered, the kind of shift you can feel before you understand it. "Now it feels like something I shouldn't want." "Do you?" She didn't answer. But the pause was its own confession. "I spoke before I thought better of it. You keep pulling back. But you're still here." Her eyes flashed, a flare of emotion that didn't read as anger, more like frustration with herself. "You're young," she murmured. "Too young to understand how easily people ruin each other without meaning to." I swallowed. "You think that's what this is?" "I think I've lived long enough to know better. But not long enough to stop wanting." That did something. Her breath caught, subtle but not hidden, and she looked away like the words had landed somewhere she tried to guard. I could see the vein in her neck pulse once. She was breathing slower now, heavier. I didn't reach for her. I just stood close enough that when she turned back, the space between us was thin enough to feel. She studied me like she was searching for regret before it happened. Instead, I lifted my hand, slowly, giving her every chance to stop me, and brushed a strand of hair back from her face. My fingers barely grazed her temple, but she closed her eyes like the touch carried weight. Her lips parted, not in invitation, not in refusal, just in something raw and unguarded. When she opened her eyes again, there was a softness there that didn't match the words she forced out. "This can't happen," she whispered. "It already is." She didn't argue. Her hand lifted to my chest, resting there lightly, not pushing me away but grounding herself. I could feel the tremor in her fingers through the cotton of my shirt. Her forehead nearly grazed mine. The space between our mouths thinned to a breath. "If I cross this line," she said, "I won't be able to take it back." "Then don't take it back." Her eyes searched mine like she needed me to say it again, louder, clearer, but I didn't. I just let the silence thicken until it spoke for both of us. Her thumb moved, barely, a soft drag against my shirt like she was memorizing the feel before deciding anything at all. The sound of her breathing filled the quiet. She leaned closer. Just enough that I felt the warmth of her breath touch my mouth. And then, her phone buzzed again on the desk, sharp and sudden, like the room itself flinched. She didn't look at it. She didn't move. Her next breath trembled. "Tell me to stop," she whispered. I didn't. The lamp flickered as her phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, but this time her hand froze midair. I could see the sudden tightness in her jaw, the pulse in her temple that betrayed her calm words. "It's not just a message," she said slowly, eyes not leaving mine. "It's from him." My stomach sank before I even understood. From who? From my ex, she whispered. He saw us tonight. Saw me with you. The words hit the room like a sudden draft, cold against the warmth we'd built. I stepped back, almost instinctively, but her hand brushed mine, lightly, almost accident, but enough that I felt the spark linger. She didn't retract it. Her fingers trembled slightly, betraying the controlled facade she tried to maintain. Why now? I asked. My voice cracked somewhere between confusion and frustration. She inhaled, long, slow. Because he's always lurking somewhere. Thinking he still has a say. Her lips pressed together, not forming a smile, but not quite a frown either, just a delicate tension that made her even harder to read. I wanted to ask more, wanted to unravel the specifics of what that meant, but another layer of unease settled over me. She was vulnerable in a way she rarely allowed. And that vulnerability, so rare, made the attraction almost unbearable. I shouldn't have come tonight, she murmured, and the words hit me with an odd mixture of guilt and desire. She looked down, then back up, and her eyes were shimmering. Not tears. Not yet. Something else. The kind of confession that only surfaces when the walls finally crack. Don't, I said quickly, stepping closer despite the warning in her voice. My fingers found her arm, brushing gently, feeling the tension in her muscles, the warmth of her skin through the fabric of her sleeve. She didn't pull away, not fully. Not yet. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. It's risky, she whispered. Everything we're doing, someone could see, someone could misunderstand. And, she trailed off, lips parted, and I realized she couldn't finish. I didn't need her words. I understood. I lifted my hand to her face, just hovering over her temple, letting the tension of her jaw press lightly against my palm. She closed her eyes, leaning ever so slightly into my touch. The tremor in her fingers pressed against my chest, tiny yet undeniable. This isn't safe, I murmured, voice low, feeling the weight of the truth between us. I know, she breathed. Her forehead nearly grazed mine. But I can't stop. We lingered there, a whisper of motion, a brush of breath, a shared heartbeat. Then her phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, hesitation frozen across her face, and the tension snapped just slightly, uncertain, dangerous, but undeniable. I have to deal with this, she said softly, stepping back, though barely, her fingers still brushing mine as if leaving any more space between us would be impossible. I didn't let go. I couldn't. Not yet. And in that silence, with danger pressing just outside the office walls, we both knew one thing, nothing would ever be the same. The office felt smaller now, even with the late-night quiet. The lamp threw soft golden light across her face, highlighting every line, every subtle expression. I couldn't remember the last time someone held my attention so completely, so effortlessly. Her fingers brushed mine again, this time with intent, lingering. It wasn't accidental. And I realized, with a clarity that both thrilled and terrified me, that nothing we'd done until now had prepared me for this, the weight of wanting her in a way I couldn't rationalize. I shouldn't, she whispered, voice low and uneven. You know I shouldn't. I don't care, I murmured, letting my hand move from hers to rest lightly against the curve of her waist. Not touching inappropriately. Just, grounding us in the fact that we were here, together, and nothing else mattered. Her breath hitched. She leaned in slightly, just enough that the heat of her body brushed mine. I could feel her pulse under my fingers, the subtle tremor that spoke of both fear and desire. She closed her eyes for a moment, like she was counting heartbeats, weighing choices I couldn't see. People would talk, she said finally, voice barely above the hum of the ventilation. They'd misunderstand. They wouldn't understand what this is, I said, lowering my voice. But I do. Her eyes opened slowly. They searched mine like she was seeking proof that I wasn't just drawn to her beauty, her maturity, her grace, but to the person she was beneath all that. And in that gaze, I understood everything she'd been holding back, the loneliness, the small regrets, the the quiet strength she carried like armor. I leaned closer, and she didn't step back. Not really. Not yet. My lips hovered near her ear, my voice dropping into a whisper meant only for her. I don't want to step away. Not from this. Not from you. A shiver ran through her, and she pressed closer, her forehead brushing mine. Every hesitation in the past, every rule we'd almost obeyed, dissolved in the warmth between us. Her hand slid up my chest to rest near my shoulder, grounding herself against the pull of gravity, and the pull of me. I don't know if I should, she whispered again, but there was no doubt in her tone this time. Only tension, raw and palpable. You don't have to, I said, fingers lightly tracing the line of her jaw, thumb brushing against her cheek. We decide together. She inhaled sharply. Her lips parted slightly, eyes searching mine for permission, for affirmation, for understanding. And I gave her everything that needed no words, a steady gaze, a patient hand, a presence that said I was here, entirely. She leaned in closer, and I could feel the warmth of her breath, the subtle rise and fall of her chest against mine, the softness of her hair brushing my neck. We stopped just short, a single heartbeat away from dissolving into everything we'd held back until now. And then, she rested her forehead against mine and whispered, "Okay." I exhaled. Slow. Relief. Desire. Everything tangled in that one word. We were no longer afraid. We knew each other. We knew the risk, the longing, and the truth. And somehow, for the first time, it felt safe. The office was quiet again, but it felt different this time. Not tense. Not charged in the same way. Everything had shifted. The risk, the hesitation, the unspoken rules, they weren't gone, but they were held lightly now, like fragile papers in hands that finally trusted themselves. She leaned against the edge of her desk, and I sat on the floor beside her chair, legs stretched out, not caring about posture or propriety. Our knees brushed once, softly, then again, intentionally. Her hand found mine, fingers intertwining as if it had always been meant to be that way. I never thought, she began, voice low, almost fragile. Then she swallowed, a small laugh escaping. I never thought it could feel like this. Like what? I asked, not looking away. Safe. Close. Wanted. She squeezed my hand gently, and I realized that for all the tension, the fear of judgment, the unspoken warnings, this was exactly what we'd been holding back for. I smiled. I've never felt anything else. She shifted slightly, resting her head lightly on my shoulder. Her hair smelled faintly of vanilla and coffee, comforting and intimate. I leaned into her, careful not to crush the fragile balance of the moment, letting the weight of her trust settle between us. Do you think people will understand? She asked after a long pause, voice barely audible. I don't care, I said honestly. We understand. Her lips lifted in a small, slow smile. Then she pressed her forehead against mine. Then that's enough. We stayed like that for a while, neither speaking, neither moving. Just letting the quiet fill the room, the soft hum of the vents, the muted city lights through the windows, the slow, steady rhythm of our own breathing. Eventually, she moved her hand up to brush a strand of hair from my face, a tiny gesture that felt monumental. I let my thumb trace the back of her hand, memorizing the warmth, the softness, the simple certainty of her touch. Do you want to stay? She asked after another pause, voice tender. I do, I said, and when I did, she let herself lean closer, her shoulder pressing lightly against mine, her hands still in mine. The age difference, the office politics, the whispered warnings, they all melted into irrelevance. Her lips brushed my temple in a quiet, fleeting kiss. Not a promise. Not a surrender. Just acknowledgement. Of trust, of desire, of finally letting someone see all the pieces. We stayed that way, hand in hand, forehead to forehead, breathing together, until the night felt endless but safe. Finally, she whispered, I like this. I like us. I like us too, I whispered back. For the first time, nothing needed to be proven. Nothing needed to be feared. The distance, the doubts, the risks, they existed, but they didn't matter in this moment. And in the soft, golden light of her office, we finally belonged to each other.